welcome everyone to episode 1 of Conversations with Coach. I'm Tony Boniferro, joined alongside Coach Annett. Coach, how you doing today?
Great.
Good. I've had this idea of doing this show for a while now. I've wanted to kind of sit down with coaches and just have an honest, true discussion about all aspects of coaching and what coaches go through and deal with on a day-to-day basis. Every coach comes at things from kind of their own perspective, and it's always been fascinating to me as to why people put so much time and effort, money, and sacrifice so much just to volunteer. Over the past 15 years, I've seen the world of coaching change a lot. The role of coaches has also changed dramatically. I think back to my days of playing high school football, and just to give you one example, we used to have a coach who was a member of the police force, and he used to bring his police dog to practice. And if we didn't run hard enough, he would honestly send his police dog after us. And you can't obviously do that nowadays. We would never dare talk back to coaches. We wouldn't dare question a coach. The landscape of coaching has changed greatly over the past few years as youth feel more embodied than ever to kind of speak their minds. And hearing back talk today is something we all have to deal with. Coaches today aren't just coaches. They are mentors. They are mother and father figures. They are emotional support. They are recruiting directors. They're organizers, they are planners, and most importantly, they are role models. I've had countless coaches throughout my life who have played an instrumental role in my development as a person and as an athlete. When I look back at my sporting career, some of my fondest memories involve different coaches and specific events related to them. One of my favorite memories, or kind of most tragic memories in one hand, when I was playing grade 12 football for Coach Viotto, and I ended up breaking my leg in a game. Kevin Beltrano was one of my assistants that year, and my parents were out of town, so I had no one to really take care of me. Coach Beltrano ended up coming to the hospital, and he spent 6 hours with me at the hospital, and he ended up driving me home. And then the next day he showed up, he bought me a Maxim magazine back when those were popular, and brought me some McDonald's. And I haven't seen Coach Beltrano since then, but that's always really stuck with me, and I'm always grateful for him for that. That leads me to tonight. We did an episode with Jim Monaco earlier, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Going forward with this project, I hope to sit down with various coaches from different generations to discuss their days behind the bench and some of their fondest memories. Tonight, we are honored to have Tom Annett from the Korah Colts to talk about his journey and his path. So, Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
How's the arm? You want to give a little update?
I had a torn or ruptured bicep and had surgery. Feeling good.
Oh, that's awesome. So, Tom, I don't know if you remember the first time I ever met you, but when I was in elementary school, Alicia used to babysit. So she was my babysitter on Bristol Place. And I'll never forget this because I must have been in grade 5 or grade 6 at the time. And I don't know if you remember this, but you kind of came over and you snuck into my backyard just to say hi to Alicia one day. And I remember her. She was like, "Don't tell your parents." And I remember looking back and seeing this guy standing back there that I just found so intimidating. And I've always remembered you from that. That was the first time I ever met or saw Tom Annett. So that was always a great memory I'll have of you. So kind of growing up in the Sioux, how did you get started in football? Was football always something you were into, or how did you kind of grow into that?
Well, we didn't have Sioux minor football when I was younger. So high school, my dad taught us to be friends because I played football there, so I really encouraged me to. But up to that point, it was mostly hockey, basketball, tennis, and some of those were my big sports. Really, I was thinking, through school, I could play football, meet some other athletes, good friends, maybe moving to basketball. That was my main sport.
Yeah. So did you play right from grade 9?
Yeah, grade 9.
So what was your first memory walking onto the Sir James Dunn football field? Do you have a specific memory, or the first time you got your equipment, or was there something that you kind of sticks out from your first experience?
It was Sir James Dunn was rolling. Like, we had a huge student population. I think the school had like 14 students. There was a lot of grade 11s who played junior then because there was OAC. So junior at that time was grade 9, 10, and a good amount of grade 11s. And we had so many players then. Football was just kind of at its peak, I think, at that time. That they had a lot of equipment, but there was not even enough equipment to suit up everyone. So I remember the first few practices being, no pads for junior anyway. And then I think after your second or third, they started slowly suiting guys up. But the grade 9s obviously got last pick. So it wasn't the greatest equipment at that time, but I was fortunate enough to get some pads. And yeah, I remember being in that line getting it. That's a pretty vivid memory. And some phenomenal athletes. But yeah, it was intimidating, and I was still pretty big, I think, in grade 9, but still it was an intimidating experience. But great coaches, great culture there, and they welcomed everyone in, and I had a really positive experience.
So talk about your junior career, or whatever you can remember from your junior career. What positions did you originally play, grade 9 and 10? Did you get to see the field a whole lot?
I did not. I actually was a defensive back, believe it or not, in grade 9.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm 6'2", like 270 right now, so you wouldn't think that. But yeah, I was a DB. I did not play much. Like I said, we were loaded. There was probably 50, maybe 60-some people on the team. I did get in occasionally in a few games, and it was awesome. I mean, what an adrenaline rush. Football is like, that's where I got the bug. Even though I didn't really know what I was doing as a grade 9 then, but I loved it. The adrenaline was pumping, and I was hooked ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then your senior career, you ended up playing for Coach White, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Coach White
was there.
Paul was the
Coach
other
Paul,
coach.
yeah. So kind of talk about that, because Sir James Dunn back then was a powerhouse. You guys, you guys were kind of the team to beat. I remember that when I was in high school, and you were obviously a couple years older than me, but I always remember Sir James Dunn was the team to beat. Kind of talk a little bit about your senior experience and just those 2 years in senior that you had.
Yeah, well, we ended up winning a championship my grade 9 year, where I didn't play much, and then in grade 10 again, where I did play a lot. So then it was the jump to senior in grade 11. We didn't win that year. I was playing linebacker and tight end, and Coach Paul was actually Bill Paul was the head coach that year. And I'm not sure with the dynamics of it, but Coach Paul was the head coach that year, and we had a good team. But Korah actually won the city championship that year, and I think prior to our 2016 championship, 2017 championship, that was the last time Korah won.
Yeah.
So that's my grade 11 year. But then grade 12, we won. Bill Paul stayed on he became the defensive coordinator, and Ken White was the head coach. We had a great team, won a city and a NASA championship. That was probably one of the most memorable city championships. Peter Ricci mentioned a few times. It was an overtime game against St. Basil. I think we ended up winning 10-7, I want to say. Field goal in overtime. The following year, my OAC year, grade 13 year, we rolled everyone pretty good. And what happened is after we won the city championship, there was a work to rule teacher, so we didn't get a NASA that year, which was unfortunate.
So when you were there, you obviously played for Coach Paul and Coach White, two longtime volunteers here in the city. What were they like as coaches, and how did they help kind of develop and form you as a football player?
Extremely positive experience. I mean, they were great. They challenged you. I don't want to say hardy. They challenged you, but also, you felt very comfortable talking to them. You had a good relationship with them. They had a good relationship with everyone. I think that positive experience I had playing for them, like, they really made me want to coach too. All my coaches, but my football coaches especially stand out. And like just incredible motivators. They're kind of like they complemented each other very well too. I think they might have played a little good cop, bad cop at times. But Coach Paul was in guidance also at the Dunn, and it was just great. He'd call you to class sometimes, and check on how everything's going in your life. But then you talk a little football. We love that. And Mr. White was more of a hard-nosed guy, but when I got to know him better, he's just a softer side too, and he's just a great guy. Yeah,
that's great. So your OAC year, obviously, you had quite a bit of success personally and as a team. Were you heavily recruited coming out of high school? Because back then, yes, people were recruited, but it wasn't to the level we kind of see today. So were you heavily recruited, or were you recruited at all out of high school?
We were. I'm not sure what heavily recruited looked like at that time, but we had several coaches. I say we because myself and Chris Weymouth were kind of the top players at Sir James Dunn at that time, and we kind of went together whenever someone recruited us. So there was at least 3 or 4 coaches I think came up to the Sioux. And then I remember we went on one big recruiting trip. I think it was over the March break where we visited several schools.
Okay.
So, yeah, I guess a fair amount.
Yeah. And then you ended up going to Windsor originally, correct?
Correct.
Can you kind of talk about that decision and what led you to go to Windsor?
Yeah, I really didn't know much about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so different today with the amount of information and how in-depth recruiting is, just from the time from when I graduated to when I was recruited. So Windsor was it's the closest school to Sault Ste. Marie that has football, and that had some appeal to me. John Maione, another Saulite, was playing there at the time. So I remember getting recruited there and talking to him, and that kind of excited me as well. So, and they had the program I wanted. I got in human kinetics there. I knew I wanted to do something related to sports. And I don't want to say my marks were bad. They weren't great, but I think maybe a string or two got pulled to get me into the human kinetics program there. So that had a lot of appeal.
That's great. And did you play football there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
played 2 years.
You played 2 years there. That's what I thought. So you were at Windsor for 2 years, and then you ended up going to Laurier. Can you kind of talk about that decision and how that ended up coming to be?
Sure. So my first year there at Windsor, I started, had a great season. I shared the Rookie of the Year award with another player there, which was actually named after Sault Casola, Casola Award. So that was a pretty big honor to win that. That spring ball, so after my first, we were not very good. We really struggled as a program. We were young. And that spring, in spring ball, I had a wrist injury, broken scaphoid, never healed. And I ended up having to get surgery on it by the end of the summer again, where there's pins in it. So I was not allowed to play the following season because of this. Normally I'd say cast it up and go ahead, but the surgeon said, because there's pins in there, you can't. So I practiced that whole year with the team. I just wasn't allowed to do any contact. After that, things weren't going great at Windsor. The program was struggling, but more importantly, me had a few things going on in my life. I wasn't really doing great academically at that time. And I think I just had a stronger support network at Laurier. I let our coaches know when I started shopping around to a few schools, and Laurier had a lot of appeal to me. My father went there, and Lee Kahn was playing there, a good friend of mine. And I went down and met Coach Rick Smitch. Rick Smitch, he was the head coach at the time. And I don't know, I just connected with him. I had a really good experience with him. And Coach Gary Jeffries is the defensive coordinator there at the time. So
we found this old picture online of you and you ended up going there. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a beauty.
Yeah.
A little more hair there.
I know.
But yeah, I had a great experience. Rick Smitch was awesome, and I'm happy I chose it. It was a great experience.
I was actually committed to go to Laurier because I went on a recruiting trip to Waterloo and to Laurier, and Dan Weymouth took me out when I was down there, and I got some stories from down there, but we had a great time. But I was committed to go there, and then at the last second, I pulled the plug and decided on Western. But yeah, I mean, I was fascinated by Laurier. I loved that school. I loved everything about it. So after going to Laurier, obviously it's a big decision for you. Talk a little bit about your time actually playing at Laurier, and just what was the difference? What was the big differences you found between a Laurier program and say a Windsor program at the time?
Yeah. Okay. My career was not great there. It was pretty injury riddled, unfortunately. But Laurier was a booming program at that time. They were a winning program. They were competing in the Yates Cup. And when I went there, I was just expecting, just another level of athlete compared to what we had at Windsor. But that wasn't the case. I mean, the guys were the same. No one was really bigger, stronger, faster necessarily. I mean, there were a few exceptions, but it was mostly a culture thing. Just the way they worked in practice, the way the leaders, there was great leadership, the way they challenged people. They welcomed the rookies in, but challenged them. It was a super competitive environment, but extremely positive environment. And just the amount of work, like film work, was just another level compared to what we were doing at the other school. And not to knock Windsor, it was a great school. When I went there, there was a brand new coaching staff, and they didn't really have youth sport experience. So I think they were still learning the landscape. And over time, that staff ended up being more successful at Windsor. But I think they were still trying to figure out the landscape at the time. And I jumped into, one of the premier programs, and that just the way it was structured and the culture, I think, were the two biggest surprises.
So obviously this isn't something that is, everyone loves to talk about, but, you had a pretty significant injury while you were at Laurier. I'm going to kind of obviously I have to ask you about it, and I'll let you say as much or as little about it as you'd like, but can you kind of talk a little bit about the injury and maybe how it happened and just about that time?
Yeah, I have no problem talking about it. So I think that was my third year at Laurier, my last year there. There was week 4 game against Western. The game was a night game. I remember it vividly. It was on TSN too, so it was a big time game. And it was a close game. I think it was about maybe halfway through the third quarter. I think they were just running a simple zone scheme, and anyone who's played linebacker, you kind of sometimes see that window open up, almost like you're the running back. You know he's going to hit that hole. So I pressed it. I met him right in the hole, and he went down to lower his shoulder. I went down with him, but I made the crucial error of dipping my head, and it was kind of a head-on-head injury. And when that happened, it compressed my spine, and a cervical vertebrae, C5, had a slight fracture on it, and my disc got blown out. So I broke my neck. It sounds really bad, and people think paralysis when you break your neck, but my spinal cord was not severed. So it was close. It could have been. Sometimes when there's that fracture, it could cut. But I was very lucky. I was told having a muscular neck at the time kind of saved me. But when it happened, I didn't know what happened either, right? I just felt a pain, and I thought it was a stinger. So the scary part is I finished the game.
I was going to say, I think I've heard this, and I was going to ask you about that. You actually finished the game.
Yeah, I made a couple tackles after that, surprisingly. I mean, I do not recommend that. It was stupid, but I just, I went to the sideline, I explained I thought it was a stinger. I don't blame anyone. They have no way really of knowing. So that night I was getting more and more painful and stiffer. The next morning we usually have a practice. At that point I couldn't really move my neck. I was walking around like this, right? I went to the campus doctor there. She said, I think you're okay, but we need x-rays. Went and got the x-ray, and then they started freaking out. They put me on a spinal board, said, don't move. Right to London, Ontario, and had a surgery, a C5 fusion and discotomy. So they fused 2 vertebrae together. And the surgeon did an excellent job. And I've had very little issues with it since.
Really? Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So you haven't had many long-term side effects from it.
No, not really.
How long did it take you to heal from point A to point B? Obviously, it's going to be a continuation, and there's certain things you can't do. But how long before you felt relatively normal after that?
It was relatively quick, I'd say. I mean, a year, maybe 5 months later, I was lifting heavy weights again, and I wasn't doing any contact sports, but Maple Leafs player Gary. What's his name?
Roberts?
Gary Roberts. He had the same injury.
Oh, okay.
And he played after he had the injury.
Oh,
so,
wow. Okay.
What the surgeons can do now is incredible. And I decided not to keep playing. I mean, I thought had this not happened, I may have went back to Laurier and do a master's because I had some eligibility left, but it's probably time to hang up the cleats.
Yeah. Was it a tough decision for you?
Yes, it was very tough. I mean, you have a sport that you love, but it's also part of your identity. You see yourself as a football player, varsity athlete, and when that ends, that's difficult, I think, for a lot of athletes to handle. Whether it's an injury or just their career comes to an end, it's kind of an identity crisis a bit. You got to figure out what you're going to do. Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that because we talk about this quite a bit. You hear about players who finish hockey careers or football careers before they're 30, and that's been their identity for that long, right? And you're known as Tom Annett, the football player, for 20 years or 21 years, and then all of a sudden for that to kind of end, and then try to find a new identity, that's tough for a lot of athletes, right? So was that something you struggled with a little bit as well?
Yeah, I definitely did, because it came to such an abrupt end. But I think it happens. Everything happens for a reason. When that happened, some of the best advice I got was from my mother. She said, when one door closes, another one opens. I really started going hard on my academics then. I always took academics kind of seriously, but I was all in then, and I actually achieved academic all-Canadian status my last year because of that. So, and that opened a lot of doors for me in career opportunities. So, it's tough though. I've had some friends really struggle with that, losing that identity. But the big thing is if you have such a positive experience playing, and it almost motivates you to continue, living that out and applying some of those great values you learn to other areas of your life.
That's right. Absolutely. So after you finish school, you graduate from Laurier, you're kind of at a crossroads what to do with your life. Did you always know that you kind of wanted to be a teacher, or was that something that was always on your list? Or did you, how did you end up going to teachers college? How did that end up coming to be?
Good question. Well, both my parents are teachers,
Yeah.
and I never really thought I wanted to be a teacher, to be honest. And it was just kind of one of those things like, I'm done now. What do I do? I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
It was just one of these things. Well, I guess I'll apply to teachers college. But I knew I loved athletics, and even though I wasn't playing them, I wanted them to be a part of my life. And I knew I wanted to coach as well from a young age. I always loved coaching, partly because I had such great coaches and they had such a big impact in my life, like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And I knew teaching was probably my best opportunity to continue coaching in my life. So, yeah, I applied to teachers college. I applied to a few other a GIS program as well at another college. That was another career in urban planning I was considering that I was pretty interested in, but I think it worked out pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm happy with the decision. Yeah.
Absolutely. Where did you end up going to teachers college?
Nipissing University.
So you did go to Nipissing,
Bay,
yeah. So you graduate from Nipissing and you ended up in Brampton, I believe, for a year, you said, right?
Yes.
So what kind of led you to Brampton after teachers college?
So what happens when you graduate teachers college? I mean, it was kind of tough to get hired anywhere in Ontario at that time. So what we did is just fired resumes out to every school board everywhere. And for whatever reason, Brampton was one of the first places that called. I think the second place that called me, went in for interview, called me the next day, said you're hired, took it. So I mean, it wasn't, considering the job market at that time, you didn't really mess around. If you got a teaching contract job right at teachers college, you take it. And it was a great experience being in Brampton. It's much different than being in Sault Ste. Marie, but I really cherished my time there. I taught at a school called North Park, and I coached football there as well. I was a defensive coordinator at that school.
So you spent a lot of years away. And what I always find fascinating, and this is something I went through as well, right? When we were in high school, it's like, I can't wait to leave the Sioux. I can't wait to leave the Sioux. And then I lived out of town for 5 years, going to different universities. And then I was like, I can't wait to get back to the Sioux. Right. So it was just kind of, you find that a lot with people. For you personally, after having that job in Brampton, was it always a goal for you to return to Sault Ste. Marie?
Well, ideally, I would have liked to have stayed in that GTA area a bit longer. I mean, I was still pretty young and I was having a blast there. But at the same time, my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time, you mentioned earlier, Alicia, she was moving back to the Sioux and supply teaching here. Yeah. And I knew long term, if I wanted to raise a family, I really think Sault Ste. Marie is the place to do it. So when I was in Brampton, I threw out one application to just the Algoma District School Board and said, if I get this, whatever, I'll take it. I didn't think I would get it, but the stars lined up, and there happened to be a job with my qualifications at CAS, Central Algoma, and I took the job. And my wife Alicia also got hired there, so it was great.
That's great. So you were at CAS for 2 years, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Talk about your time at CAS. What was that like, having your first or a full-time teaching job, back home almost, right? And they didn't have a football program out there, so that kind of, I know you did some work at the Dunn back then, but just talk a little bit about that and going to a school without football.
Well, two real extremes, going from kind of like an inner city Brampton area to CAS, so it was like just two polar opposites in terms of dynamics, but a great experience. I'm glad I had it. And there's a phenomenal athletics program at CAS. Duncan McKenzie ran the athletic program there, and I can't say enough about what I learned from him. The intramural program, for people who don't know about CAS, is best in the country, I would say. What they do there with their intramural program is unbelievable. So I'm really glad I got to be a part of that. I coached basketball while I was there. I think I helped with a little bit of track as well, but I was coaching junior football, driving in and coaching junior football at Sir James Dunn. Tyler Hankinson was the head coach there at the time.
Yeah, that's great. So then you were there for 2 years, and then you ended up getting a job at the Dunn, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that must have been quite an experience, right? Kind of coming full circle. Just what was that experience like when you got that phone call saying, "Hey, you know what? You got the job at the Dunn, and we want you to keep doing football." And what was that like for you?
Well, that was awesome. I mean, I went there. My dad taught there. I played there. So Joey Turco was the athletic director there at the time, and he just got promoted or moved into administration. So I jumped into that athletic director position, which is another great learning experience where you're kind of overseeing all of the male sports in the school. But it's just incredible. It was weird teaching in the classroom my dad taught in for 30 some years. and I taught geography just like him there, along with Zed, and great school, great kids. I mean, I cherish my time there. It was excellent, and we were fortunate enough to have a really successful football team there too when I was there.
Yeah, you did. What do you take away from your first few years as an athletic director? What did you learn, when you first went to Sir James Dunn?
Well, that's an incredible experience. Just seeing how much goes into running a high school athletics program, like so much behind the scenes stuff that people don't know about. Then there's the ins and outs of the Constitution and how that works. And you hear about all kinds of issues that arise from that every year, just because people, a lot of coaches aren't fully aware of all the rules and how that works out. And then you have the NASA rules and OFSA rules, transfers. Like there's all kinds of issues there that people don't understand. Like why can't he just go to this school and play? Well, OFSA is the governing body and they oversee these rules. So learning a lot of that, those policies, I think was important. Seeing how schedules are made and budgets are made as well, I think was really valuable experience. But, overall, it gave me a much greater appreciation of the previous athletic directors. The great late John Kovich at Sir James Dunn when I was there as the athletic director. And we had no clue that he was doing all this stuff behind the scenes. He was the athletic director at the time and running an incredible athletics program. And, until I did it, I didn't really understand how much went into it. Yeah. So, it was a valuable experience.
So you had a couple. How long were you? You were at the Dunn for what? 3 years?
3 years.
3 years, I believe. Yeah. So you had a pretty successful football program going then, and you were really starting to kind of change the dynamic of the program and kind of, just kind of continue the success and kind of continue the tradition. What was your favorite memory from your time at the Dunn as a football coach, specifically related to football?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I inherited an incredible team and an already incredible program. But winning that first OFSA championship in 2009, which was the last year that Sir James Dunn was open to. I mean, the school closed after that 2009-2010 school year. So we had an undefeated season, won an OFSA championship there. Now, I'll say that was probably, I know people have different opinions.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was, in my opinion, one of the most talented football teams ever to come out of the city. And, you don't realize that when you're coaching them, but there were some absolute stud athletes who went on to have incredible university careers. And just the sheer amount of players on that team who played U Sports was unprecedented. Mm-hmm. So it had very little to do with me. I appreciate the opportunity to coach those phenomenal athletes. And they're just great kids and great families, and they all bought in. So it was just really special. All the parents were phenomenal. It was just a great community there.
And then Superior Heights, you ended up going up there for a couple of years, and you were never at Superior. Okay, so that's when the transfer happened. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, so I remember when you ended up getting transferred to Korah, and it was kind of the buzz around town, right? That Tom Annett was going to Korah, and at the time, I'm not sure how you felt about it. So obviously things have changed, and obviously it's worked out extremely well for you. But what was your initial reaction when you were told, "Hey, you know what? All the work that you've done here, we're moving you to Korah." And keep in mind at the time, Korah wasn't, Korah's football program was struggling a little bit, and they were kind of down in the dumps a little bit. So what was your initial reaction to being found out that you were going to go to Korah?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I just, I don't know why, but I just assumed when Sir James Dunn and Boating amalgamated, I would be at that new school at the time. Not really having a full understanding of how seniority works and the union. So I was even brought into meetings where we were planning the new uniforms, the names, the building. So all that led me to believe like, oh yeah, I'm going to be at this school. And we had a really successful program with a lot of returning players and who I developed relationships with. So yeah, I thought I was going to be there, but it was kind of a shock when I was told I'm going to Korah. But like you said, it took a while to build it up. And I'm not saying it was just me. I mean, we had incredible help and support there, but obviously it worked out great, and I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. I'm so happy I ended up at Korah.
Yeah, it's funny, and that's another example of, at the time you kind of question why things happen, and then you down the road you kind of see it come full circle, right?
Yeah.
And it almost seems, this is an assumption by me, but it almost seems more of an accomplishment to see what you've kind of built there now, rather than if you would have just stayed at Superior, maybe. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, even at the Dunn, when I
became the head coach there, I mean, it was already a super successful program, a great culture in place, great leaders. And I didn't realize how valuable that was, that was carried on from all the great coaches they've had there. And then you go to a program that was down for a few years there. And you take a lot of those things for granted, right? Just that leadership and culture that exists at the school. So, but being a part of the rebuild, it's almost more meaningful, and you almost get to put a little bit more of your own personal stamp on it. And I think that's special. Yeah.
So this is a very general question. But I want to talk kind of about how you turned the program around and how you kind of led to get to where you are today. So kind of talk about when you first got to Korah and, some of the things that you started to change in the football program and kind of in the culture and just some things that you started to establish there.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue there at the time is there wasn't head coaches in the school at the senior level, and not that people can't be successful doing that. And there's a ton of awesome community coaches, but it's definitely more challenging to do. Being in the school gives me so many more advantages. So I think just having someone in the school that was really excited about football. One of the things we started doing my first year there, actually my first 2 years, I said, I'm going to coach the junior team, and we wanted to build it from the base. Kind of begged Steve not to run the senior program, and numbers were low, but he did an incredible job running it those 2 years. But what we did is we called every single grade 9. I asked for a role. I want every single grade 9 that's coming to school. We made a personal phone call, invited them out for football. And it was surprising how many kids just didn't even know there was football, or if there was football, most of them didn't know it started a week before school with training camp. So our first year there, I think Steve Crusoe is going to be our principal now at Korah. He was the AD at the time. I think he was just stunned when he saw 60-some kids show up for junior football that first day, right? And we actually had to approach Sergio Acco, our principal, and say, we need more helmets. So we had to beg him for some money. So we built that. That was a good way to get numbers early on. I remember we tied for first in the league that year. There was a 3-way tie for first in the league that year. And so they hadn't had success in a while. And I think that really helped. And the second year of junior, we played in the city finals. We lost to St. Mary's in that one. And then I moved up to senior. And we took our lumps pretty good in senior there for a few years. It took a while to build up. Our numbers were not great. We had a problem retaining guys from junior to senior. But I think what the big thing that changed there, one of the big things, was the strength training program, without a doubt. So we've built up the weight room at Korah now where it's unbelievable. And every year it's getting better and better. I mean, we were peaking out there right before COVID, where we were running 2 workouts a week for our grade 10, 11, 12s, and 2 workouts a week for the grade 7, 8s, 9s in the school. And it was rocking. So getting a set program there with consistent attendance, I think that really took us to another level. For sure. Then the other thing was just doubling down on the culture stuff, really working on leadership, teaching kids how to lead. I think at the senior, like I said, we lost a lot of games the first 2 years in senior, but then we started chipping away and we got to a city championship. And I think one year, we found that we got to teach kids how to lead. We had good kids, they were leaders, but they didn't really know how to lead. And I think that's something you need to do in this day and age. So doubling down on that, culture too, sometimes you think when you're struggling, you need star players, you need to make an exception. Well, we just want this kid out, but sometimes you have to go back before you move forward. So just being stern, and, we expect our top players to be among our hardest workers now. That's just a standard, right? No one's going to get a free pass because you have God-given talent. So culture, leadership, strength training. I mean, those are the 3 big pillars, I'd say, that really push us to where we're at now with back-to-back provincial titles.
You have quite the staff, right? That's worked with you over the years, and you've mentioned a few of them so far. Can you talk a little bit about the coaching staff that you've put together, junior, senior, and kind of how this all came to be, and how you were able to recruit such a nice staff?
Yeah, well, I think we're blessed. I really do think we have one of the most talented coaching staffs, not just in the city, I think in the province. I think coaching with the SaberCats program has helped a lot as well. We have being in the coaching game for a while too has helped. I think I've coached high school and SaberCats every year to some degree. So now some of those guys who I coached even in SaberCats, even at the Dun, like a Jamie Antonello, who's now coaching with us, who's one of the brightest football minds in the city. So I don't know if many people know, well, maybe you didn't know us, but Bill Paul, who was my coach in high school, he coached with us a few years at Korah too. I managed to get him out of retirement. And having him there was huge for setting that foundation for our culture, you know, because I'm that young coach and I'm not seeing that big picture of the long game about how important that culture aspect is in leadership. And he really hammered that down. So he's an incredible mentor as a coach. Another guy who's an incredible mentor was Paul Kalbeck, who, when Korah won back-to-back city championships, 91, 92, Paul was the head coach then.
Right. Yeah.
So he became our vice principal, and he helped coach a couple of years with us. We kind of shifted our offense, and he was excellent. He's kind of one of those guys who really pushed that unity aspect of the team and teaching kids how to lead. I mean, he was big on that, and we did a lot of work, not even on the football field, just talking to kids and meeting with captains. So, I mean, that's been huge. But now the staff we have now, I mean, Tyler Hankinson is back with us now. Who's, I think, one of the brightest offensive minds in the province. So we're really excited to have him, and he's likely going to be calling the offense next year. Jamie Antonello is back in town. He'll be working with us again. Matt Primo has been with us for a long time. Who's the head coach of the varsity SaberCats. So, you know, incredible. And Bob Lambert, longtime teacher at Korah. It's so awesome to have, you know, anytime I said a head coach being a staff member is huge, but any staff member on the coaching staff is huge. So, you know, Tyler Hankinson, Bob Lambert, incredible having them out there. Travis Zorza has been helping us with our line play as well. I mean, we've had a number of, I'm afraid I'm going to leave someone out because we have people come in and out here, right? But even people that aren't on the field, and that's so valuable. Like a Jacob Porco does all of our finances, equipment collection. That's freed more time for our staff, which is unbelievable. Lisa Fletcher has done a lot of promotional work and fundraising stuff for our program. Another staff member at Korah, so that's amazing. And then of course the junior program, Marco Bernabucci is the head coach there now. Jamie Antonello was the head coach for a few years, and they've had unbelievable success. The amount of city championships won at the junior and NASA championships at the junior level have been incredible. So. And Marco does a great job with his staff as well. So, you know, that Marco also being a teacher at Korah,
it's a huge
running
help.
Our junior program.
It's funny you keep mentioning that because obviously I coached at St. Mary's and St. Basil's for plenty of years, and it's difficult when you're not in the school to you know, to kind of stay on top of things. So it is. I hear what you're saying there. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, Tom, was when you kind of came to the Soo. The Soo was obviously known as a smash mouth football town, right? You know, lots of pounding the rock and lots of running the ball. And that was kind of what the Soo was known for. When you came back to the Soo, you implemented a spread offense, which really kind of threw everybody off for a little while. How did you evolve to the spread offense, and what made you want to kind of introduce that game here in Sault Ste. Marie?
Another really interesting question. So my first year coaching senior football, I thought I was going to be the DC, and just a few things happened. I just told I was the head coach, I think a few days into practice. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, it was a great learning experience, though. I feel bad for some of the kids on that team because I wasn't, I think, as effective as a coach as I am now. But I was calling the D, and I was a defensive player. That's what I did. I only coached defense. The second year at the Dun, I think that would have been 2008. Tyler Hankinson moved up to senior with me, and you know, we're big college football fans. And at that time, it was Mike Leach air raid just shattering records all over the NCAA, right? And we're saying, well, what's going on with these air raid teams throwing for 700 yards a game? And so we really did a deep dive on that, and we started saying, you know, why? And CFL teams are doing something similar, but no one in the Soo is doing this using the whole field. So we deep dived in it. We did clinic sessions. We bought videos, and you know, we gave it a shot. And I think we had quite a bit of success with it that year. It was I think we beat St. Mary's was the team to beat at that time. I'm trying to remember if we beat them in the regular season that year. I can't remember, maybe not. But we had some really close games. And there was one game, I believe. Oh yeah, this is an interesting story. Tyler was still the offensive coordinator. I was still figuring out offense. Still didn't have much of a clue, but Tyler's son was being born, and and he couldn't be at the game. So as the head coach, I was calling the offense, and my head was spinning.
Yeah.
And we got a little behind. I think we threw an interception right before half on a bad play called by me. And Tyler actually made it back for the second half of the game. I'm like, please call the rest of the game. Yeah. And we were down, and we had this little no huddle package that we had too. And we started going at a faster tempo. Yeah. We were scoring a lot of points fast. I can't remember, to be honest, we won that game or not, but that's when it said, okay, we're spread and no huddle. This works. There's something to it. The following year, 2009, with that extremely talented team, we said, we got a lot of talent. How can we exploit it? Or we're going to spread and go ultra fast with this no huddle system. And like I said, we won a provincial title that year. The other big spread guy, though, in town was Steve Knott, who was coaching the Sabercats, and he was all in on the spread offense, too, with them. And they had unprecedented success ever since running that spread type offense. They used the similar, almost identical no huddle system the first few years, and obviously Steve put his touch on it as well. But and then the rest is history. We had a lot of teams around the province asking us what we're doing. We did a few clinic sessions, and it was pretty popular.
Yeah, that's great. So you ended up I want to say 2019, maybe it was, when you kind of started to revert back now, it almost seems, right? So now other teams are starting to use the spread quite a bit. Right. And then you ended up reverting back to a more power run, I almost call it like a Sioux style football, right? Like, 80s, 90s Sioux style football. Yeah. What kind of led to that change? And obviously you've had success with that. So just kind of talk a little bit about what led to that.
Well, I'm a big believer in being unconventional. I think that gives you an edge. So if everyone's running the same offense, it's easy to prepare for that team, right? But if you're doing something significantly different, it's hard for that team in 1 week to prepare for you. So like you said, everyone's gradually started running the spread as well. And then I believe it was 2016. Coach Kalvik was with us. We said, let's switch to the wing T, which is a 2-back tight end wing, 3-back, I guess you could say, tight end type offense. And we almost had to do it. I like being unconventional. The spread wasn't really, everyone was running it then, but also we had really low numbers that year. Korah, I think we only had 24 guys on our roster. And going fast, no huddle, and having a 3-and-out wasn't going to cut it because so many guys were both ways. So we said, how can we slow the clock down as much as possible? And there's a few run-dominant offenses that we considered, double wing, single wing, but the wing T had appeal to us mostly because of the misdirection. Mm-hmm. So it allowed us to kind of play 3 yards in a cloud of dust. The Sioux was still 4-down football at the time, and it allowed us to milk the clock, give our guys a rest. And even though we felt maybe some teams had more talent than us that year, we figured if we can just keep it close, slow the game down, as long as it's close at the end, we had a shot. And it was 2016. Believe it or not, that team with just 24 players, we ended up going to the city finals. We play a loaded Spear Heights team in the finals, and we're down by 2 points. We score a touchdown, chance to go for 2 to tie it with, I think, under a minute left, which was mind-blowing. Considering I think the odds were really stacked. I think we were down to 20 players at that time because we had some injuries in the semifinals. So even though we lost that game, I like to think we won the battle. I constantly reference that game, the toughness displayed by those kids on our team in 2016 to all of our future teams. The following year, Sioux moved to 3 down, but we had so much success in that type of offense. We said, well, now we have a bigger roster, more talent. Maybe we can do more with it. And we just evolved it a bit, added some shotgun elements to it. And, the rest is history. We won city, Nassau, 2017, 2018, 19 provincial championships.
I know you were instrumental in kind of the Sioux going back to 3-down football, and you had quite a bit of say in that. At the time, and this is the old school me talking here, but I always loved the Sioux. I always loved Sioux rules football, right? Like I liked the Ford. It was almost like a mixture of the NFL, but a mixture of the CFL, right? And it kind of took the best of both worlds. I felt that decision to go to 3-down football. Obviously, that it makes it better on the provincial scale and puts us more on a level playing field. But kind of talk about how you ended up, kind of that actually coming through and actually going to 3 downs.
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't really pushing it that hard.
Okay.
I mean, because we had actually 2017 was also 4 down. Sorry, it wasn't.
It was. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I
I had that wrong. So we had almost won the city championship in 2016. 2017, we did win it. 4 downs running that wing T. And we were very, 3-4 yards in a cloud of dust type team. So I was happy sticking with that in a 4 down system. The challenge that year in 2017 is we went to NASA in North Bay and lost by 1 point. And I think anyone who's played there knows there's some challenges. We were in a lot of, it was 3 downs. So even after you get out of the Sioux, NASA and Officer were 3 downs.
Yep.
But we found ourselves in a lot of 1st and 15, 2nd and 20s. Yeah. And that 4 yards in a cloud of dust didn't give us as many options as we wanted to in those situations.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, but still, I wasn't really pushing super hard. I love the 4 down game as well. Yeah. I think it's the most exciting, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I didn't push it either way. I think the other schools kind of wanted it a little more than anything. Yeah. But I was either way. I was flexible, and it seemed like that's what locally we wanted, and I supported it.
That's great. So obviously, things always aren't, butterflies and roses. So, throughout your time, obviously with change comes a little bit of criticism or skepticism. We'll use that word instead, right? Did you ever experience any skepticism, and kind of how did you deal with that, as a coach here in Sault Ste. Marie?
I'm not, do you mean like in terms of switching schemes?
Yeah, like switching schemes, and just kind of, because what you were doing wasn't something that was seen here, right?
Right.
Talking specifically about the spread, right? And there were a lot of people that would say that's not going to work, and you can't run, and I was one of them at the time, you can't run a spread offense in November, like how are we supposed to run a spread offense with the snowstorms, things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard much of that, but like, kind of how do you deal with those people, and how do you deal with people questioning those things sometimes?
Well, to be honest, we try and block out a lot of the outside noise. I mean, what's really important is what we do within our team. And, I heard I hope I don't butcher this, but a really good analogy lately about, this is our boat and that's our team. What can sink a boat? Well, if water gets in, it's going to sink.
That's right.
So all that outside noise, people talking about us, that's the water. If we don't let it in our boat, it doesn't matter. It's not going to sink us.
That's
so, to be honest, we pretty much blocked it out. And I think that is a good approach.
Absolutely.
You'll hear that at every level, everywhere, no matter what offense you switch to. Someone's going to have something to say about it.
So true. Because those were my concerns, right? It was like, when we have our snowstorms, how are you going to run a spread offense, right? And you guys prove that it can work and be successful. So that's great.
I'll say too, though, that like I said, that Dunn team was special.
Was pretty good.
They could win in almost any conditions, but yeah.
So before we kind of continue onto your Football Canada, I just wanted to talk a little bit about coaching today and how it's changed from when we played or from when growing up. Obviously, there's things that we experienced at a younger age that if we tried today, we would wouldn't be allowed. So how have you found yourself as a coach kind of progress and kind of change, coaching today than what you were doing or how you were coached?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very different, but I think a lot of things are still the same. It's still about relationships. How you develop those relationships and foster them may be a bit different, and how kids react. The thing you hear all the time, kids are different today, and I hate it when people say that, because kids aren't different. The world around them is different, right?
That's right.
People always complained about younger generations. And that's not going to stop forever. But obviously, the technology is the biggest change. And you go into high school now, it's just phones everywhere, right? And how that affects kids. I mean, one thing we alluded to earlier was about the leadership aspect. I have my own kind of some thoughts on this, but when you and I were growing up, you go outside, you play street hockey. There's 10 kids there. You figure it out. You make the rules. You shuffle sticks. You play. You go to the to the elementary school. We're playing Bach, and you figure it out. Someone steps up, leads, makes the rules, and that's how it works. What I'll find in phys ed classes now, if you kind of do that, no one's really going to jump up or set it up. And I think because they're not getting those experiences at a young age, I think so many of the sports and physical activity now is, well, you're going to, like Like I just brought my kids to soccer. There's the coach. You do what they say.
Yeah.
There's less free play. And as a result, kids aren't learning to lead from a young age. And that's where I get to that point where we have to teach kids how to lead. I think that's a big part of it. I've talked about this with some other people too, about, willing to compete and fear of failure is a big one. I think kids are a lot fearful of failure today than in the past. And I think the technology is part of that. I heard an NCAA coach talking, if you had a DB blew the coverage, it'd be, maybe showed on the highlights or talked about for a day and that was it. But now it could get plastered all over social media. You can have every idiot making a comment about that DB for weeks. And I think that makes kids a little more fearful of errors, but we really try and ingrain our players that you can't fear failure because the most successful people fail the most often. And we encourage them to take these risks and chances. And even in our practices, we'll put them in situations where they're not going to be successful because we want to see how they're going to react. So that ingraining that out of them, that fear of failure, I think is crucial. And teaching them to lead, I'd say those are the two biggest things now dealing with today's youth. But it's still all about relationships. I mean, you got to develop relationships, and I think our social media too. We've Jamie Antonella and Matt Primo, some a little younger than me, and they're the ones who convinced me to run a Korah Football Instagram account. And I think even just something like that has really helped having a social media presence, which is something I took for granted.
So I got a little something I want to show you, a little bit of a surprise, and I don't know if you've ever, Jay, if you can fire up the clip. So I've reached out. Obviously, we kind of put this together fairly quickly because we had this schedule. But this is a player. He's I don't think you even had a chance to coach him yet.
I know Wesley,
but I know you. I know you know Wes. So I asked Wes to kind of what makes Tom Annett a good coach. And this is a video he put together. So if you could start that over, Jay, I don't know if you can, but.
Him or something, and it just makes him.
Oh, we can't hear it in here, but
stand out from all the other coaches, and that's what I like about him.
Technical difficulties, but so Wes went on and said some nice things about you and kind of what made you a good coach, right? And kind of did something like that. So you know what I'll do? I'll actually play it on my phone here so you can hear it, and that way we can just you can listen to it and kind of get your thoughts. So.
He's not just there. He also gets down and personal with you. Not a whole lot, but he does get a little bit personal, which makes it a better connecting point, which makes it better training and learning. It helped me, and he's always down to go in the gym or something, and it just makes him great, and that's what makes him stand out from all the other coaches, and that's what I like about him.
So what I find interesting about that is everything that you've kind of discussed so far today, now you have a player who hasn't even played for you yet, kind of saying the same things that you're saying. So, just your overall thoughts, that must feel pretty good that kids are seeing that already, right? Before you even have a chance to have them.
That's great. I think, part of having a culture is you have almost a shared language. I'll hear kids mocking me or imitating me a lot, and I love it because they hear my sayings I'm constantly preaching. But Wes is a great kid. I mean, what's so crazy to me with COVID is, I watched Wes in grade 9, and it was an incredible player for us. And now he's going to be a senior, playing for us next year. But he's an excellent leader, great, really good kid in the school, well liked by peers, teachers, and we're super excited to have him in the senior program.
That's awesome. So we obviously have to bring this up too quickly. So football's kind of gotten a bad rap, recently over the years, and my involvement with Sioux Minor football, and this is one of the things that drives me bonkers is this whole talk about I'm not going to let my kid play football due to concussions, but then they put their kid in contact hockey, and you look at the stats and all that type of stuff. So you've kind of taken over a role with Football Canada, or you've done some work with Football Canada over the years, and specifically have talked about heads-up tackling, which I love, and I talk about heads-up tackling to everybody. and we teach it with our young kids, and all the rules about. I remember what you said. I want to be able to look you in the eye or smell what you had for lunch, or that was one thing that I remember you talked about that. Can you kind of talk about how you got involved with Football Canada? Involved with the heads up tackling, and did your own experience of your own injury kind of play into that?
Yeah, I was doing some clinic presentations. I mean, Canada Football Chats, kind of an amateur football website that's pretty well known in our country, and they hosted some coaching clinics a few years ago, and I spoke at some. They invited me back a couple more times. I think it was my third time speaking at the clinic that I decided to do a presentation on tackling, and it was right around that time that Football USA was rolling up their heads up tackling, and Canada wanted to do one as well. We were safe contact is what they call it here. And at that time, because I presented there 2 previous years and they were pretty well received, I, kind of got in contact with some of the brass there at Football Canada. And they saw this presentation I put together on tackling. They loved it. And they said, this is exactly how we want to design our new safe contact program. So they were flying me out to Ottawa for several weeks, and one time we went out, we did some videos with some players from University of Guelph, which are on the Football Canada website, Safe Contact website, which are pretty cool getting to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm on there, and there's the two guys doing the drills that we explain. Now it's a requirement for anyone coaching amateur football in Canada has to take that course. Great experience. I mean, they flew me to Halifax one year to do a clinic. I went to Saskatchewan with them. But now we have enough learning facilitators to teach kind of what we developed initially to people. It makes more sense than flying me all over the place. But it was a pretty cool experience. And I mean, there's always upgrades need to happen. That was quite a while ago now. I think it was 2012. So even then it's evolved. I mean, we teach a lot of things even different now than that initial thing. So I'm still in contact with the people occasionally. Yeah,
I know it's kind of crazy. We talk about this with a bunch of my old football buddies, right? Especially coaches. It seems like everything we were taught growing up, put your head down, head in front of the ball. Everything has now changed, right? It's almost to the opposite. So what do you say if a parent calls you up and says, "Hey, Tom, my kid wants to play football. He's really into it, but I'm just so concerned about injuries, or I don't want them to get, a concussion and those types of things." How would you respond to that?
Well, I think it's important that you recognize their concerns. I'm a parent now, and you always want to have your child be safe. So some of the things we'll talk about is that all of our coaches are safe contact certified, or the majority of them anyway. Sometimes we'll get a new coach, but we try and get them certified. When we developed it, so that carries a little more weight. So that's priority number one. We'll talk about, it's a lot different now, the way the game's played. It's safer than it's ever been now. Okay, with advancements in equipment, we have unbelievable helmets and equipment at Korah. I think some of the best in the province. The amount of contact in practice is way down compared to when we were in high school. And the big thing, and our local officials do a great job with this, is the rules. Like, the rules have changed. Where you're not allowed to have head-on-head contact anymore. So I think a lot of people are watching, these 1980s NFL films, and that the game is so different now, right? So we try and explain that to them. Also, we're blessed to have Matt Klebus as a medical professional on our sidelines at the games, and that's huge. So, it's not going to be a coach that doesn't have a medical background assessing if your kid has a concussion on the sideline. Like, Matt Klebus is a pro in this. He's done countless certifications and his tremendous experience in this area. So having parents know that he's on our sidelines doing this, I think has really helped as well. So like I said, you get frustrated. I'm not putting my kid in hockey, but he's in MMA. But when you really deep dive, it's the stats. You're comparing apples to oranges, right? Because football, we play less games, but there's way more guys on a team. So when you say, you have this many concussions, whatever. I mean, cycling is probably the most dangerous one. I don't know any parents that don't let their kids ride a bike with regards to concussion, right?
It's funny you say that quickly, just to jump in, because we do presentations at the school boards for Sioux Minor football and to try and recruit kids. Yeah. And oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on the school, but I reference a study all the time that was done at, I believe it was Yale, now that I'm thinking about it. But there was a study of the top 10 most dangerous activities for kids to do under the age of 15 that involve head injuries, or where they're most likely to get head injuries. riding your bike was number one.
Yeah.
You know, riding your bike was the most
Right.
common thing to get head injuries. Soccer was number 2.
Yeah.
Hockey was number 3. And football was, I think, down like 6th or 7th on the list in terms of head injuries for kids.
Yeah.
So under the age of 15, right? So to hear you talk about that, you know, you're right. You're bang on with that.
But I mean, if any other coach is in that, I want as many kids playing this game as possible because I think it's the best vehicle for teaching life.
Yeah.
So it's important to address the safety concerns and really let them know everything you're doing to being safe. I know we want to like talk about that aspect of it, but sometimes you got to bite your tongue and just really explain, you know, we are doing everything in our power to keep your kids safe.
Absolutely. So you developed the PowerPoint presentation that football or that Canada Football kind of used. You know, that's a pretty big deal in a sense. You've almost revolutionized the whole game, you know, and do you ever really think about, have you had time to really think about that or reflect on the overall impact that, you know, that you've had on football at, you know, at such a relatively young age still?
Yeah, well, like I said, my experience with that neck injury and my coaches were awesome. I think it was, you know, just a slight lapse in judgment and, you know, other factors. I think with just not strength and conditioning properly too. I had more waist bend and not enough hip hinge, just lack of mobility that led to my injury. But that kind of motivated me to, when I started coaching, I never want to see any of my players get hurt. So I read everything I could find on tackling, went to every clinic I could find on tackling, contacted every coach who was an expert in tackling, because I just kind of got fascinated with it and then said, I want to do a clinic presentation on it. And I mean, it's rewarding to know, but I mean, you know, it takes a village. The people at Football Canada had the vision to really fund this and bring it to the next level and make it a certification. So, I mean, it's great to have a bit of a piece in that.
Yeah.
And I'm just happy to see the game safer and anything to make the game grow.
Absolutely. We've been on here for almost an hour now, so I really appreciate you doing this. But before we got a couple more things I want to talk about. First of all, obviously your family, you know, you have a young family at home. You know, you're married now. You dedicate so much time and energy into football and into your job and into your career. Kind of talk a little bit about your family and kind of the support that they've been for you throughout all this.
Yeah, I'm blessed. My wife is extremely supportive, and you can't put in that much time into a program unless you have support at home. And I think getting my family as part of the program too. You know, I love that they come to our games. My wife will bundle up her kids even when it's snowing, raining, and one of the happiest moments for myself and I know our other coaches on staff with young kids is after the game, win or lose, the kids come and give you a hug. That's a special moment. Those are some of the things you remember more than anything. So, but my wife Alicia is great. I think what helps too is she is also runs a ton of extracurriculars herself. She ran a dance studio, Central Dance. Has done unbelievable things with dance in the community, especially down the line in the Cass area. So she understands the value of this and how it helps kids. And I try and support her in her dance as well. So it's kind of mutual, but she's a superstar and I could not do what I do without her support and understanding.
That's great. All right, we're going to play a little rapid fire question here. I got a few questions for you. So you've covered a few of these things, so that's fine. And feel free to pass, but if you need to. So, and some of these are pretty general, so I don't want to put you on the spot here. But obviously you've coached so many kids over the years. And, you know, as a coach, we all have a few that stand out in our mind. You know, who are some of your favorite players that you've coached, not necessarily even from a skill wise, but just as a personal level or a few kids? And I understand we're all gonna leave some kids out, but are there any that come to mind off the top of your head?
Well, yeah, I honestly feel like talking like a parent, which kid you like better. I love all the kids. I mean, they're great. You know, I can't pick that. Like different kids I like for different reasons. I mean, the kids who work the hardest are maybe stand out a bit more, but we've had so many great personalities, and you know, it's not always. I've coached some tremendous talent as well, extremely gifted athletes, but you know, sometimes we have kids that aren't born with those genetic gifts, but they just put everything they got into the team, and man, are they awesome and people I really am glad I got to coach.
What's your favorite memory as a player?
A player? Oof. Good question. You know what? I remember when I was in high school, Coach Paul, I think, brought in, was it Lou Melchiori? I think it was.
Okay.
Maybe he came and talked to us, and
Wow.
he played at Ferris
Yeah,
State and,
yeah.
and had I think he was the leading all-purpose yards guy there, and kind of a big deal there. And he came in, gave us a pregame speech once. He said, "You know what? All that success I had at Ferris State, he's like, the games I remember most are my high school football games."
Yeah.
And I thought, I didn't really believe him at the time, but when I look back, for me, it probably is high school. I think it might have been winning that senior city championship, NASA championship, grade 12s and grade 13 years.
Wow. What's your favorite memory as a coach?
As a coach,
or your proudest memory as a coach?
I'll give a couple here.
Okay, yeah.
That I referenced this earlier, but it was that 2016 city championship that we actually didn't win, but just so proud of that team, what they were able to accomplish, and against all the odds, come within 2 points in a game where I think we were probably 30, 40 point underdogs. Yeah. So that one really stands out. I guess you could say probably our last two offices too have been special. I think that 2018 one was just in Ottawa in TD Stadium. I mean, that was just special.
If you weren't a teacher, what would you be doing?
Oof. I don't know. I have no clue. I guess maybe if my life veered there and I went to Fleming College and took that GIS class, maybe I'd be an urban planner somewhere. I have no idea. Yeah. I have no idea.
Who's the better athlete today, Booch or Primo?
You're putting me up.
I'm putting you right on the spot.
Flames here. Today? Or
today.
What are you talking about?
Today. Right now.
Oh, jeez. Well, I'll tell you, they're both better than me today.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
I can't even do men's league or anything without getting hurt. They're still playing, so I'll steer clear of that one.
Fair enough. Will there be high school football in 10 years?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I've heard other people in the community say no, but it's just impacts so many lives and so many positive experiences. I mean, it would be sad to see it go away. Mm-hmm. You're never going to lose football, I don't think, but a lot of people are talking about like club taking over and stuff, but I think that would be a huge mistake because that would mean fewer opportunities, right? Yeah. With high school, you'll get guys that maybe couldn't play on a club team to get to play, and just all body types too. That's such an important thing in high school. We have a place for everyone on the team, big guys, small guys. There's something for everyone. If you want to put in the work, you can make an impact in our program.
Who's been your biggest inspiration as a coach?
Oh, I've had many. Obviously, I'd say my high school football coaches for sure. But Gary Jeffries at Wilfrid Laurier definitely stands out. He's just so well known. Like anyone who's played for him, he's like a father figure. I'd say my linebacker coach at Wilfrid Laurier too, Ron Van Moorkirk, was excellent. Yeah.
If you could talk to Tom Annett when he was fresh out of teachers college, what advice would you give him today?
Be careful when you deadlift so you don't hurt your arm.
Absolutely.
That'd be one. But what I say, it takes a while. If I were to give myself advice about coaching, I just wish I would have understood earlier that it's about people first. I don't think I ever completely disregarded that, but that is priority number one. Developing relationships with people. X's and O's and stuff are important, don't get me wrong, but people first. And if you don't have that and develop those relationships, doesn't matter how good your practice plans are, your X's and O's, if kids aren't buying in because they don't trust you and have a relationship with you, it ain't happening. So.
And finally, this is probably the most important question. We ask this to every guest that we have on any Sioux Sports or Outspoken Sports show. So the Annett family is sitting down and they're going to order pizza. Where does the Annett family order pizza from in Sault Ste. Marie?
Oh, wow. Well, I'll be honest. We do a variety. We're not set on one place. Yeah. But you know what? Sports Center and the Esquire have been pretty good to us.
Yeah.
That's usually where we end up after our games with our staff. So I guess I could hype them up a bit if I had to choose right now. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, Tom. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes here. Just anything else that you kind of wanted to say. And, obviously Korah is become kind of a football powerhouse. So, if there's kids out there and they're kind of watching and thinking that they are going to Korah, but they're, debating whether or not they want to play football at Korah, if you could sell the program, I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of say what you want to say about the program. So go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. If it's just about playing football, I mean, if you're a young athlete, I think absolutely everyone should give it a try. I understand football is not for everyone, but I've seen this happen so many times. A kid not play grade 9, 10, whatever. They're just focused on hockey. Then they come out, maybe their grade 12 year, and they're like, oh man, this is the best thing I've ever done. Why didn't I play in grade 9? So no matter what school you are, who you are, if football is even like, a distant thought, please go out and give it a shot at high school. Now, all the high schools are great. Obviously, I'm biased towards Korah, but I think we have an incredible program there now. It's built up to be just phenomenal coaches, athletes. The culture's excellent. I think we're one of the few programs in the province that has when COVID isn't happening, a year-round strength and conditioning program. What our athletes have achieved in that weight room is pretty incredible, and that's helped them not just in football but all their athletics. So I think that's a big thing that we have. Excellent staff. We have the IB program there too that I know is an appeal to a lot of people. And Sergio Acco as our principal is just an unbelievable leader, an incredible man. He's retiring this year, but Steve Crusoe's coming in, who's also excellent. So great leadership at the school too. But like I said, all the schools are great. You get great coaching in every school, but I think what we got going on at Core right now is something pretty special. And if someone's considering where to go, if they're kind of evaluating different schools, well, talk to some people in our program, see what it's about. I would recommend that, and check us out on Instagram. We talk a lot about our program there as well.
That's great. Tom, you know what, on a personal note, when I was coaching, you were always really supportive of me, even though I was with another school. And if I had questions, you'd always, answer them. And we talked a lot. And I really do think that what you're doing, it's not something that you should kind of look past, because I think it's something that you should be very proud of. And I think down the road, you're going to kind of look back and fully realize what you've accomplished at such a young age. And it's just, Korah's lucky to have you, and Sault Ste. Marie is really lucky to have you as a football guy here, because your passion, your love for the game, it's infectious. And, obviously I coach a lot of kids and do a lot of work with kids, and everyone that's ever worked with you has positive things to say. So congratulations with what you've done so far, and best of luck going forward. And I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Bono. And it was great to be here. And if I have to sign off, I don't know if it's time to sign off.
It is. Yeah.
It is. All right. I got to say, go Colts, TPW.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And we will be doing this every couple of weeks. So look out for the advertisements on Sioux Sports. Thanks for tuning in.